time it is? Yeah, it's that time. What time? That time? All the time. It is the Letterman Jacket Podcast, coming at you live from both sides of the Mississippi, sponsored by Kilo Charlie Clothing. It's that time once again. Here it is with your hosts, Pat Ruffino and Tucker Shaw.
How you doing, everybody? Happy to be back.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
for all your thoughts and your prayers.
Yes, sir. Tuck, you were out for a night, man. Got a tummy ache, whatever ache. You know, you can't be doing that to me, man. I don't have a co-host. You can't be my Max Keller. Like, how can I be on a radio show, Tuck, and not have my Max Kellerman to the Stephen A. Smith?
Well, I don't know about that whole comparison there, but obviously we're going to bounce things off each other. And you know, I really appreciate you carrying the load for us while I was really severely ill there. Thankfully a short-term thing, not a long-term thing, obviously. But you know, we're just gonna keep moving forward, and I'm glad to be back. And let's give them some content. Let's give the viewers what they want.
Exactly. So coming out of Austin, Texas, technically somewhere in Texas, because he is a native Texan, former Cleveland Browns quarterback, jumping right into it, going down to 6th Street to play in the Spring League. So for those of you who don't know, the Spring League is another attempt for a developmental football league in the NFL. And last year, a couple guys got signed to the Canadian Football League, a couple guys got signed to the NFL. No one to be home about. A couple guys who were playing were people you might heard of. Ahmad Bradshaw Ahmad Bradshaw is probably the one that I know the best, but you know, guys got signed, so it did prove. And for leagues like that, that's the biggest thing I feel, is that as long as they're getting guys to a different level, even if it's AFL, they're getting guys paid. And Johnny Manziel is going to take a swing at the Spring League.
Yeah, I actually haven't heard too much about the Spring League, but any opportunity afforded to a highly talented guy like that, you know, a dynamic, one of the best college athlete, you know, football players of all time, and you know, I always want to see first-round quarterbacks make good because it so rarely happens, and I always had a love-hate relationship with Johnny Manziel, so. You know, I always respected his on-the-field stuff so much, and then couldn't always understand what was going off the field. But hey, man, you know, and so for both things, I'm stoked. You know, more football is great, and then more Johnny football is even better.
Now, are you supportive of his on-the-field play because Texas A&M moved to the SEC? Because that's what I'm picking up. Because it's amazing sometimes you watch these guys with so much talent, and you're like, damn, man. He freaking roasted us that week or this week, you know, and I'm a little nervous for him, man. I truly am. If the Spring League was in Bismarck, North Dakota, I'd be like, yo, this could probably work out with him. But he's going down to Texas, where he's from. So whenever in your home state, hometown, nothing good happens, you know. There's that. But he's going down to 6th Street, which he has a past in. Those are his own stomping grounds. Are we a little bit worried about that, Tuck? What do you think?
You know, Pat, actually, I'm really, really happy that you brought this up. I'm going to play Johnny's advocate here and say that I actually think it's a good thing if he winds up playing in Texas, if he winds up having to make that, you know, a home for him instead of L.A. You know, although he's doing well in L.A. right now, that was kind of a problem for them in the past, was the LA party scene. And so his family's in Texas. His best friends are in Texas. You know, on the Pardon My Take interview he did, he talked about, you know, how his high school friends from Texas are his truest friends, and those friends, you know, maybe from LA or once he got famous, those were the snakes, and those were the guys that, you know, you couldn't trust. So I actually think Texas would be a great place for him. And I don't know how much time he spent in Austin because, you know, I think he was either in College Station or you know, near his hometown.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah. Please enlighten me if there is a story.
No, he's gotten arrested on 6th Street before.
Good to know.
There's a video with him on one of the bars on West 6th Street. So 6th Street is divided into 3 parts essentially. There's East 6, Dirty 6, and West 6. Dirty 6 is more of the college scene on it. East 6 is your Williamsburg hipsters, and then West 6 is the young professionals of Austin. And he's a higher costing drink and clientele and whatnot. So there's pictures of him just chilling in pools with a rubber ducky or not inflatable duck, just blitzed out of his mind. But he's also gotten pretty. I don't even know what the word is to use, but pretty intoxicated, I guess, on Dirty Six, hanging out with some college.
Less than desirables. Oh, yeah. Okay, college kids. Yeah.
College kids, probably
just college kids. Yeah.
So you're saying that Drake is a bad influence on Johnny Manziel?
No, I mean I don't want to give too much verbatim from that interview, but shout out Part of My Take. I mean those guys are great. I kind of look to them for some inspiration sometimes.
Wilbon is great, man. Wilbon is awesome.
Wilbon from Part of My Take Barstool, not ESPN.
Oh, sorry, that was. Yeah.
It's a late night for both of us. We both held multiple roles in life.
Well, Wilbon, if you hear this, you are great. I do like Wilbon.
Shout out Wilbon. Shout out Part of My Take. Shout out everybody. We're trying to just give all love. But where were we? We were talking about how in the interview Johnny went over a lot of things. He went over in depth, in detail, his struggles, his road back to where he is now, which I'm glad about this spring signing because it gives him a tangible, positive headline where he could say, look, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Like this deal wouldn't have come to fruition if I wasn't sober for the last 18 months, like he says he is. So, all those things are good. This is a good development that it came from his social media page. Whereas even that Part of My Take interview, which was just very recently, he was still saying, "Oh, there's a lot of things on the table." He was being non-committal in that interview, but because of that interview and because of this news, all of it, my passion for Johnny football has been reignited a little bit. I mean, I was never his biggest supporter or his biggest critic. Like I said, it was always kind of a love-hate thing because that's kind of the personality that he has. So I support Johnny football, and man, I just want to see him on the field. Let's go.
Well, I'm pretty excited for it. I hope he stays, safe, healthy, while down. He wouldn't be the first NFL player down in 6th Street to have himself a rough time. # Jason Morrow.
Oh my goodness. Okay, you know what? Let's save that. For when we can reward the listeners that we have. We're just trying to build some listeners right now. We're still a little early, so that's a good thing. But if you know who Jason Morrow is, if you listen to this podcast, you might know who Jason Morrow is as a human being. And we got a great story about him for later.
Yeah, that's a story and a half, man. But it's good to see one Cleveland quarterback kind of getting his life together. Now let's segue into the Cleveland Browns. Joe Thomas doing some recruiting, which means two things. One, he's coming back next year. Torn triceps, let's get a new streak, guys. Come on, let's go.
He's a leader of that franchise, and he is such a franchise organization first guy that I can't read into. And I'm I wouldn't have jumped in so quick if I hadn't thought about this when I heard this, because he's such an organization first guy that I feel like because he had a media obligation while he was still under contract before the league year restarted, that he was going to talk to the media and he was going to say great things for the Cleveland Browns because that's what he's been doing for the past decade. I don't know if it's an indication of him having any interest in returning or if it's just him being a company guy. And I think both are equally possible. I find it, as a speculator, if I were Joe Thomas, or if just looking at it somewhat objectively, I mean, come on, the guy's accomplished everything you can as a left tackle in this league, other than win, and that's not his fault at all. So that kind of a severe injury where he's never had something like that before. I mean, a torn triceps early in the year it's still, he's still in the rehab process at this point. I have a hard time saying that Joe Thomas will be back next year, which obviously would be a huge problem for the Cleveland Browns. They want him back. Everybody wants him back. This actually, I'm glad you brought up this story, Pat, because this marks a historic occasion for the Letterman Jacket Show podcast show stuff. If you listen to our first episode, we talked a little bit about the free agent, quarterback market, and how the Alex Smith trade affected Kirk Cousins. And I, tried to throughout the show kind of pick up on what Pat said and kind of hold him to it a little bit, because I thought we had our first take ever. And the first take was that the Cleveland Browns would be a great fit for Kirk Cousins in terms of the financial availability that they have, and obviously he's going to command that much money. And, he might be from the Midwest, maybe some coaching things there. There might be some connections. Pat had the details on that on the first episode. Check it out if this is your first listen. But so with Joe Thomas coming out with this storyline about Kirk Cousins, maybe leading them to a championship if the opportunity presents itself, I think that confirms that our first take was 100% completely accurate. And as such, we're 1 for 1. We're 100% in takes. Sports media has gotten all about takes and your hot takes and your controversial takes and your against the grain opinions and causing up controversy. And although we didn't want to quite pan that as extreme as a lot of people do, this was a prediction on my man Pat over here. Like I said, he's a scout emeritus active, and yeah, man. So he called Kirk Cousins fit there, and so I just think that's a huge historic occasion. This is probably our second or third full episode. We had some shorter episodes in there, and so Pat, tell me as the resident GM, is Kirk Cousins to the Browns really a serious possibility? Is that even really in the realm of possibilities, or just a nice dream?
Well, there's two ways you can look at this, and it's depending on the type of person you are when you want to build your team. Do you want to go the Elway route? Build the defense, get your veteran quarterback, and go out and win. And and with doing that, we can always pick apart the Peyton Manning debacle of 2015, but they still won the Super Bowl because of defense. But up until that, he was killing it offensively. So it was a dramatic drop off with that. But Kirk Cousins is a lot younger, no injuries than Peyton Manning. So it depends on, like I said, does John Dorsey want to go that route? If we kick it back 6 seasons ago, in 2013, replacing Scott Pioli, John Dorsey made a trade for Alex Smith. They had Matt Castle there before, and then a couple guys didn't work out with Brody Croyle and draft picks and whatnot. And it just depends on what do the Browns want to do. Their defense, as we've stated before, is on the up and up. I think their offensive line isn't terrible. If you do pick up Kirk Cousins, now you can shift the draft pick to immediate impact players like a Saquon Barkley or Micah Fitzpatrick, the safety. And now you're getting more players who can play and make an impact. And then you kick it to the second round, and you can get even more impact players. I'm never against taking a guard in the second round. I think it's one of the easiest positions to rate. Maybe that's going to ruffle people. So it just depends. Cleveland's gone the young QB way. They've gone first-round picks. They've gone fourth-round picks, second-round picks, third-round picks, and none of it has worked. 2007, they picked up Brady Quinn with the 22nd pick. No dice. 2012, Brandon Weeden. 2014, Johnny Manziel. All first-round picks. Then you can throw
22.
in... Yeah, all at the 22. Then you can throw in the Deshaun Kaisers, the Cody Kesslers, Kevin Hogans, Derek Anderson.
Okay, all three of those guys are good quarterbacks. Like, in comparison to the rest of their jersey, those last three guys that you mentioned, Deshaun Kaiser, Cody Kessler, and Kevin Hogan, actually might have a shot at, like, orchestrating a game managing 60 minutes for them.
Yeah, but honestly, the terrible thing, I don't want to say the terrible thing, but the thing about Cleveland is that they could easily go 9-7 next year and sneak into a playoff berth, and
right. I mean,
but they're not going to do that with 32 turnovers from Deshaun Kaiser or Kevin Hogan, not Kevin Hogan, Cody Kessler. Maybe later in his career he develops, but as I've stated in
he's
the
a little
first,
small just
yeah,
for the Browns situation. Yeah.
But they're also all kids. They're all our age, not to give away how old we are. And even in my profession, what I'm doing for my full-time job, I got a decent amount of experience, but I can't, there's a certain aura of having the guy like Josh McCown in there who's like, hey, maybe if you give him a little shoulder shake on that drag route, the guy running the slant and go, he's going to be open because that's what happens. Or hey, make sure when you're looking down here, these are the things. Or look at the film. This safety doesn't open his hips all the way. There's certain things that Cody Kessler didn't see at USC that he can't tell Deshaun Kaiser, and Kevin Hogan probably doesn't know because he had guys like Christian McCaffrey and Tyler Gaffney and Ty Montgomery and Devin Kajus, freaking guys, studs at Stanford, where he didn't need to do a lot of this stuff, where he's just like, and David Shaw is an amazing quarterback coach, so he can just be like, no, it's fine, just give it to Tyler Gaffney or give it to Christian McCaffrey. So they need. I'd love to see them get Kirk Cousins. I think it'd be fun.
They need some experience. Yeah. In the room, at least in the quarterback room, they need some experience, like you're saying. Like why they let Josh McCown walk it still continues to be a conundrum to me, and kind of a very much a caricature of what we've seen recently from the Browns. And it's so hard to land one of these guys. There's so few success stories, and you don't need a franchise quarterback to be a winning football team. And the Browns should take that to heart as much as any other team in the league, if not twice more so. They should be one of those teams that's like a Rex Ryan team, like defense, because you can get those players, you can draft those players, you can sign those players without breaking the bank. In most cases, you build the defense, inside out, lines up. There's a way to do that where offensive line, defensive line, inside out, then some skill position players like a running back, like to me, having a good fullback only helps a young quarterback. That's a simple play, whatever. I digress. So I think In
2007, the last time the Browns had a good team was, and they went 9-7, and it was Derek Anderson led. Charlie Fry was the starter. Anderson came in, and that's like the last thing. And then and then the next season, that season they drafted Brady Quinn, but he's not even a Cleveland guy. So these guys are literally throwing darts at the board.
Whoa, what do you mean? When you say Brady Quinn's not a Cleveland guy?
No, I was talking about Derek Anderson.
Oh.
Derek Anderson was drafted by the Ravens originally, gets cut, picked up by the Browns. They shuffled through him, Charlie Fry, probably Kelly Holcomb. I'll just throw a dart at the list. Spurgeon win, even though I think it was a couple years earlier. He leads the team to a 10-6, 9-7 record, and then the next year he's unserviceable. I just don't understand how you can keep drafting guys and mess up. I don't get it,
but
they do it. They're the only team. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, let me just interject because I think the fact that you and I are both rambling about this, stumbling about this, I think that's clear. We have a lot to say about the Browns, and we're not trying to pick on them. I just think that there's such a if this was a class or something like a research, like they would be the case study because they're. I mean, that's too harsh to say. I mean, but the record on the field says that they're rock bottom. They haven't won. They won one game 2 years. All right,
Hugh
that
Jackson
is what it is.
has won. Is 1-31 as a coach. How does he still have a job? And the worst part is he's not a bad coach. And it really comes down to, as we saw with the Eagles, how essential quarterbacks are in this league. And it always comes down to the quarterbacks. It really does.
You know what? Yeah, I mean, obviously that was something we tried to let our listeners know the first episode, and why we're going to talk about quarterbacks. And although quarterbacks get all the media attention anyway, I mean, we can't stress enough that how vital they are to the game. We both we're like, personal philosophers about the game. Who cares about our 2 cents? But when we're analyzing the game, it's just like when you don't have a quarterback, things become so much more difficult. And and the Cleveland Browns have obviously become a running tabloid headline about that with that picture of that 20 name jersey. So when there is that situation, it's there, it exists. Let's not kid ourselves. I think that you're starting from the bottom, and to me, our guy. All right, okay. So I'm from Queens. I'm a Mets fan. If you see Moneyball at all,
Jonah Hill,
and okay, well, or otherwise known as Paul DePodesta, one of the smartest guys in the world, if not the world, especially in sports. He's an analytics guy for the Moneyball thing, and then just recently, past few years, he was with the Mets, and then he wound up leaving the Mets because he got a better gig with the Cleveland Browns, switching sports entirely and just taking the numbers analysis of it to the Cleveland Browns. And so I feel like they're approaching it like a baseball team, where in baseball you have to look at things more long term. It's just the way the sport's set up. Contracts, games, longer season, longer everything. And so I think they're kind of taking a baseball team's mentality. I'm not the first person to say that. That's not a hot take. That's a freezing cold take. But it's I think it's almost come to fruition where that freezing cold take is confirmed. Like, they are taking a baseball approach. To me, as a Mets fan, I see Hugh Jackson very much in the mold of the responsibilities that Terry Collins was given as a manager. He, like, the reason we were so happy Terry Collins became the manager of the Mets when he did is because we knew that we weren't going to have immediate success, and that a guy like Terry Collins, a guy with years in the game and a leadership guy, and this can be said about Hugh Jackson, a guy that's as good a scout as he is a coach, regarded for Hugh, and a little bit for Terry sometimes too. And but the fact that they're both they've both got the experience, that's not going to be a question mark at all, and the leadership's not going to be a question mark at all, and they can preside over a rebuild. And I think the Browns, the front, Jimmy Haslam's a smarter guy than the casual fan gives him credit for, obviously. And the organization, nobody in that organization is any less committed to what they're doing than everybody else in the league. There's been some peculiar stories out of there, but peculiar stories happen everywhere if you look hard enough. So we're kind of ragging on the actual results of the Browns, but we're really looking at it from an analytical research, almost case study perspective of, if you were to start an NFL franchise, that's basically where the Cleveland Browns are, because they have no success. They have no, since they've been back to Cleveland, they have no tradition or culture to speak of. All that stuff's from 50 and 60 years ago, and there's been so much turmoil since then that they're really, to me, the case study of what are you going to do when you're the new kid on the block in the NFL.
They owe more to their fans, man. That's
they got a loyal, diehard fan base, that's for sure.
They owe more to their fans, and this is the problem. Well, there's a lot of problems, obviously. So let's say they don't get Cousins, right? Let's say Joe Thomas lobbies and that whatnot. Are they going to go with A.J. McCarron? Because they are going to bring a free agent quarterback in. They have to.
A.J. McCarron would be a great fit for them, dude. Great. But then they need to sign McCown or Fitzpatrick or something.
So,
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, they swap. Let's see. I'm curious to see a lot of things. AJ McCarron just won his grievance, so he is a free agent. So and just another heartache thing for the Browns is the AJ McCarron blunder trade where they didn't get their paperwork done in time. Like, come on, guys.
That's what I was referring to a few minutes ago. Without, I'm being a little too tiptoe around the bush tonight. I don't know what I'm doing, but that story to me was ridiculous, and I don't understand. I mean, I understand. We're younger guys. If we're the same age as some of these NFL players, and so we're starting our careers. And when you're starting your careers, you might make some administrative mistakes. You might make some mistakes. A lot of mistakes. You're going to make a lot of mistakes that might make you look like a fool, but after 6 months, you start to look more like a pro. To hear to me that a war room of NFL executives, maybe some branches of the ownership, whoever, that they are on the phones completing a trade with another team at the trade deadline and just don't fax it into the league office. Like, what? Like, how are you celebrating so hard that you forget? Like, that's the only, not even like plausible, but the only feasible thing I could even come up with that could be an excuse. I mean, so I don't know. I know that story broke wide. I don't know if that story was confirmed by a second source or anything. But if that was exactly how it played out in the story, then man, that's a bad, troubling sign. And maybe that, maybe the Hugh Jackson isn't taking as much of an executive role as you might like, as you and I might like, Pat, for sure. Yeah, I mean, oh my goodness gracious. Oh my gosh, sorry. That's me. We're gonna have to edit that out or something. Oh my God. It's getting towards my bedtime here on the East Coast. Pat's lucky he's an hour behind us on the Mississippi. He's got a whole hour. We don't have a whole hour left, so let's just let's do one last thing here. If you're still with us at this point, if you're still with us through that malfunction, then you're a diehard fan, and we love you and we appreciate you. And please connect with us any way you know how. If you're our legit friend, you're listening to this still, just let us know, thanks, man, we appreciate that. Whoever you are, we appreciate that. So we would love your feedback. We're thinking about doing something new tonight. We're gonna do a segment style, portion of the show, and if you like segments, if you think this goes well in comparison to the previous, 30 minutes of the show, then please let us know. If you think you just kind of like the freestyling more, let us know, and we'll work on that. Any feedback is much appreciated. Please comment, please subscribe, and spread the word for sure. So, without further ado, I think the best way to describe this segment would be, saying farewell to something that you dearly love. Maybe almost like a eulogy of a dear loved one passing away. And this is going to be about, football players or maybe other trends in sports that we've always liked and that are, their time's coming to an end. So there was a story breaking today, and Pat, could you enlighten us about that story today?
So, for those who don't know, Sebastian Janikowski, former Florida State kicker, first-round pick, I believe the 17th overall in the first round, was released. He got hurt earlier this year, was replaced by a gentleman named Giorgio Tavecchio, and I don't know if I said that right, but that's essentially what the gentleman's name was, and he, after spending God knows how many years with the team, is gone. One of the last members from the 2000...
17 or 18 years.
Yeah, I think
18 years, I think it is. I
think he was the number... not the number... I do know he was one of the last members of the... Well, no, he is the last member of that 2002 Super Bowl team. One of the last members... The last member from Gruden's first regime, which to me really signifies the changing of the guard, essentially, and the new era of Gruden football down there. But yes, he has been released with the team. and is now looking for a job. Still looking. No reports have come out to say if he's retired or whatnot. But ultimately,
but the Raiders are moving on, right?
Yes, yes.
Wow, I just cut you off bad there, Pat.
No,
We're gonna have to work on our rhythm there, but that's my fault. That's my bad. Yeah, so his time's come to an end with the Raiders, and I never thought I'd see that day coming. Actually, I know from being a GM in Madden that his contract was never really that advantageous for the team. I think that might have been left over from the great late Al Davis days, who just took care of his players like I think all owners should, in some respects. So I mean, to me, I always, again, something that Pat and I kind of love is special teams. Special players make plays on teams. And,
special teams is paramount.
Special teams wins games. Shout out Mike Westhoff. If you don't know who Mike Westhoff is, look him up right now.
From 2000 was the 17th overall pick in the 2000 draft.
Okay, so 17th pick, first round pick as a kicker. That's unheard of. I mean, the Jets traded out of the first round to take a kicker in the second round, and other than him and Roberto Aguayo in the second round, that's the highest I've heard of, and that's 2 recently and then 1 20 years ago. So that just goes to show the value of these positions relative to the other positions, and just kind of how it's hard to find quality guys like this, and the fact that he stuck around for 18 years is impressive. He's just one of the best to ever do it. He's one of the most unique to ever do it, both on and off the field. Even his name is unique. Where I was going with this was, R.I.P. R.I.P. to the Raider career of the late great Sebastian Janikowski, Raiders kicker, setter of several records. I don't think he's the owner of any anymore. But in any case, he in my opinion, if I had a vote, I'd put him in the Hall of Fame first ballot, or at least on the last ballot. We're going to miss Sebastian Janikowski. I have a tough time thinking that he might get signed. I don't see him trotting out there 16 games for some team next year. Just you don't see that a lot.
He's a big boy. He's definitely a big boy. Like he's about 6'2", well over 215, 220 pounds. He's a big boy. So it's a lot of stress. And I feel like because of his leg being so great, I feel like he might have the most attempts at 60-plus yard field goals. I know he's attempted like a 68 in a game. And then there's always the warm-ups of him nailing 70s and whatnot. But, man, he's a
specimen. He's a specimen. I mean, didn't he have the record at 62 for a while?
Yeah, and then I think Prater broke it with the Broncos, I believe, Matt Prater. And I think David Akers hit a 63. There's a couple, no, that was Elliott.
But I think
Josh Elliott hit a 61. But he definitely. They threw him out there a lot, man. They did throw him out there. A lot.
They trotted him out there. That's why I loved him. I mean, that's why I have these memories of these stats of him from a time when, I didn't know that much about football. I was just getting into the game, and seeing this guy getting trotted out there, it's like, hey, don't they usually punt in this situation? Like, oh yeah, but he's just on the edge. He might be able to make it, and I mean most kickers can't, but this guy's got a leg, and he's left-footed. He hooks the hell out of the ball, like all kinds of crazy things, and man, he's.
So I pulled up his career records right now. So he's got the longest field goal in overtime of 57 yards. He's got the most field goals in one quarter, which is tied for four and a quarter. He's got the most field goals of 50 yards and plus, and that's 55. Most field goals of 60 yards plus, that's 2. Most field goals attempted of 60 plus yards is 8. So he's 2 for 8 on 60-yard field goals. most field goals of 50 yards in one game, which is 3. Most extra points in a Pro Bowl, which I think that, career, which is 8. And then longest field goal attempt, which this is unofficial, of 75 yards. So he's got the leg.
75-yard attempts. I mean, unofficial still, but the fact that that's even an anecdote, the fact that he was trotted out there to attempt a 75-yard field goal, which again, that's not 3/4 of the field. You gotta do the calculation there, but that's, I mean, it's still astronomical. And to put a cap on how much I respect Sebastian Janikowski and how much I think he's always been an entertaining storyline. There was an article a number of years ago, within the last 5 years. I don't know if it was on Barstool or something a little more comedy and satirical, and because I don't know if it's a substantiated story or a tabloid story or where the original source was. But there was a young lady who was speaking to, some TMZ type outlet and said, I had a interesting evening with Sebastian Janikowski once. We were, out having a good time, having a few drinks, and, we were out late, and we're driving around, where he's driving us home in his truck, and she'd been, they both been drinking pretty heavily. I mean, so she, obviously it's not like she could have drove or anything, like, whatever the case may be. They were drinking heavily, driving around a truck. Sebastian Janikowski was blaring the Kid Rock. He had a Marlboro Light hanging out the window. And this woman says, "I've never been so scared in my life." And the fact that Sebastian Janikowski is the center of that story just sums it up for me. R.I.P. to the great Raiders legend, and that's a Raider if you ever heard a career Raider, right? That's the Raiders. That's Seabass for you. I hope Seabass does well in whatever the next chapter of his life is. But that's our little segment in terms of R.I.P. I probably should announce the name of the segment at the beginning or something, but so you might have had an idea what we were doing. But Pat, why don't you let them know about who makes everything happen for us? But before you do, I just want to say thanks to all our listeners. Please comment, please subscribe. Thanks for all the love, and keep sending in.
Guys, once again, as we close this episode, greatly appreciated that you guys keep, we're getting people are listening, people, every day we get one subscriber, a couple views here and there. I got, believe it or not, an email and from someone, and it wasn't a positive email, but someone took the time out of their day to tell us that they don't think our show is very good. So even then, we affected someone's life that much.
Wow, we have haters, man. We made it. We did something right.
Yeah.
We did something right. Ooh,
we affected someone's life so much that they were like, I need to let this person know how I feel. Yeah.
No, so, I mean, I encourage that. Embrace debate, right? Embrace debate. But, and so, hey, man, if you want to send us hate mail, send us all the hate mail you got. We'll take it. We're both, native New Yorkers, so we embrace debate for sure.
That means they're watching, man. That means they're watching. So
yeah, I mean that's what we need. If you're still with us at this point, thank you so much, and please continue to keep doing what you're doing. These shows are never going to be super long. So if you have the time to listen to the whole thing, listen to it once through, and yeah, man, just and I've got some good feedback as well on my end. Some people that are kind of well qualified to have an opinion via, maybe let's say friends of the family or something like that, who are professional people. Although this is amateur hour, they might have sent a like our way, and which is really cool considering the growing struggles we have. I know my audio quality personally on my end isn't great yet. You can see the gaming headset thing typeset up here, and so again, we have a charitable donation page set up. Pat, why don't you let them know about that, so we're a little bit less amateur hour over here.
So guys, we set up a Patreon, and the reason for the Patreon is if you feel that we are doing some good things, we want to expand on that. We want to eventually have more equipment, soundproof some stuff. So eventually the goal is to get this to be a regular show, and we're not trying to break bank, but we want to give quality entertainment. And eventually, I'd like to throw some graphics up in there and throw some shooting stars and rainbows and stuff to kind of make us, a little bit more legitimate. So right now, obviously, we're in the growing stage, but I really do appreciate everyone who does listen. And even though we get the hate here and there, at least someone, like I said, if someone was affected by our content so much, they were like, I need to let these guys know right now how I feel. So you take the good and the bad, but just wanted to once again give a shout out to our sponsor, Kilo Charlie Clothing, veteran owned and operated apparel. They do designs, they do logos, they can do your shirts for your business. So just give them a shout. I'll put the tag and all that good stuff down in the comments. And I think that covers it up, Tuck. You got anything else to add, man, other than some more sea bass stories? Because I'll listen to those.
I wish I had some more sea bass stories, but if you like that sea bass story, you might want to keep listening in. I referenced it earlier. I won't name names, but anymore. And so we got some stuff like that. We're such big football guys. Although we're football outsider guys, we have such a love and connect for the game. We'll bring you those anecdotes. Any feedback would be appreciated. And again, the reason I brought up the charitable donation thing is, like, I'm not saying, hey, give us $100. If you give us a dime, that helps. So I kind of have my hand in my hat a little bit here, just because I'm the guy, I think, dragging down the audio quality in particular. But even in terms of, if you like what we're trying to do, hopefully this isn't just, if you're watching on YouTube, hopefully you've seen our faces once or twice by now. It'd be a lot easier to do that with some different equipment. So every little bit helps, no matter what it is. And if it's not that, heck, a like, a subscribe, and a comment is probably worth more to us than any monetary thing at this point. So thank you guys so much for your support.
Definitely helps. Well, guys, I'm signing off on the air. For the Leatherman Jacket Podcast, I'm Pat Ruffino. Hanging out with my bro Migo is Tucker Shaw. And we got some more weird techno music coming your way. Good night, everyone.
Stay tuned.